Hi, everybody. Welcome. Can you hear me okay today?
Yeah. Hi, Tanya.
Hi, I'm using a microphone for the first time. I'm so excited to be getting professional.
That is classy.
We are so excited today. It feels like so much has happened in the last few weeks, and we can't wait for the update from our legal panel. Carl Schusterman. Hi, Carl.
Hi, Tanya.
And we also have Chris Musello, who's adjusting his blinds. We can see that things are live, right, Chris?
Yeah, trying to get just a little less background on the camera.
And unfortunately, Jacob Sapachnik is not able to join us today, but he will be back next month. So everybody watching for the next 30 minutes, we are going to be tapping into Chris has got the amazing legal blind, but legal mind, but he can't work the blind.
Yeah, that's my fun fact. I'm terrible with blinds.
Yes, we mustn't forget our fun facts today. So today, for the next 30 minutes, we're going to be getting an opportunity to ask your legal questions of the expert legal panel. We are also going to be getting some immigration updates, and we will continue to do these updates every month for everybody who's watching. The reason why we started doing this, the purpose, is to share information. Knowledge is power, and it's really important to keep yourself educated and updated of the changes that are happening on the immigration side, because it is an ever-changing situation and landscape. And before we get started, I wanted to also just thank the LaFora admin team once again for giving us this opportunity. The admin team are phenomenal. They work so hard. They really just do pay it forward for all the forums. So to Louise, Paul, Jean, Yanni, the whole LaFora admin team, thank you so much for giving us this opportunity. And I see, whoa, we have a lot of people joining us today. So we have a lot of people joining us, and if you have questions, I have a lot of questions that have been sent to us to ask the panel. But if you have additional questions, please put them into the chat, and I will try to get through as many as possible. So we have Victoria joining us, John, Christian, Arnell, Valerie, Suzanne, Mahalafel, Jonalyn, Diana, Janelle, Joy, Alan, Grace, Gretchen, Jonalyn, Gerard, Marika, Valerie, Mac, Floro, Precious, Marjorie, Rowena, Harriet, Alec, Roxanne. So many people watching us. We have 30 minutes, so I apologize. I'm not going to be able to call out all your names, which I love to do, but we'll try and get to as many questions as possible. So, first question is for Chris. 221G updates in the Philippines.
Yes,
what updates?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have some good news there. As has been all over the LaFora Facebook page and a variety of other forums. The 221G problem that has really been from at least December or January, right up until the last week or two, has resulted in very few nurses actually being able to get their green cards, their immigrant visas. That's the bad news. The good news is that about 3 weeks or so ago, a number of companies here in the United States went ahead and filed a lawsuit against the State Department, and we are starting to see that the immigrant visas are being issued, not first for those companies that filed the lawsuit, but I have also been made aware in the last couple of days of other companies who weren't even part of that lawsuit that are also starting to see cases reopened and requests going out to nurses for their medical exams and updated police clearance information and things like that. So, we never want to say it's over until the point when we see dozens and dozens and maybe even hundreds of nurses get theirs. But the good news is just over the last couple of days, maybe a week or so, we've seen a dramatic uptick in approvals. So I think I'm guardedly optimistic that we may be over the hill on this one, Tanya.
Okay, so that's really good news. And as many of you know, we've seen this in the Lafora forum, and many people have been talking about this. There are definitely great positive indicators. Chris, what should somebody do if they have been issued with a 221G?
Yeah, if they've been issued a 221G, I think there's two types of 221Gs, essentially. There's one where the embassy holds on to the paperwork, and then there's a second one where the embassy sends the paperwork back to the service center. Regardless of which one you get, I suggest that you respond to the 221G and try and get a new visa appointment set. I think it's important that you explain to the embassy that you're a nurse, because most immigrant visas actually are not being issued around the world and even in Manila. But there is an exception for doctors and nurses. You don't even have to prove that you are going to be working in a COVID situation. So you just really need to prove that you have an approval as a nurse. And so I would say, Tanya, that they should be contacting the embassy, responding to that 221G using the email webpage, the email address, and that's where we're seeing those cases get reopened.
Okay, thank you for that, Chris. So for anybody watching who's been in this very frustrating situation, I know there are so many of you out there that have just had sleepless nights, just worrying and so frustrated about the 221G situation. There's definitely light at the end of the tunnel. So please go ahead and take the expert advice of Chris, and hopefully the situation will be resolved very soon in the next few weeks. Okay, moving on to the next question. This is a question we get every month. Carl, guess what it is?
I don't know.
Visa Bulletin, current Visa Bulletin and predictions.
Okay, well, the Visa Bulletin itself, I just checked a minute before we went online, and October Visa Bulletin is still not out. I can check during the next question, make sure it hasn't come out, probably be out on Monday. But the really good news is, and for maybe people who haven't heard some of our prior seminars about this, the fiscal year for giving out visas starts on October the 1st. So October, November are always very happy months. August and September are the end of the fiscal year. The visas are usually running out by that time, so the backlogs, get worse. So, anybody who's been worried about that, just don't lose any sleep. Wait a couple hours or maybe a couple days till the October Visa Bulletin comes out. I think you'll see a rapid advance in the EB3, the employment-based third category that nurses are under. But the really good news that we have said before is Charlie Oppenheim, who's the person at the State Department who actually puts out the Visa Bulletin every month. This past year, they, because of all the Trump stuff and all the rest of it, they have not issued as many family visas. And most of the green cards that are given out every year are in the family categories. Only a small percentage are in the employment categories. So because they have not issued the amount of visas in the family categories that they're supposed to, he's predicting that instead of 140,000 visas being given out, green cards in the employment area this coming fiscal year, there will be 250,000. So almost doubling of the amount. So I think probably twice as many Filipino nurses will be able to come to the United States, maybe even more than that, than this past year. So it's really good news. When he comes out with his predictions, which are usually 3 or 4 days after the Visa Bulletin comes out, we post it on our website. And I look, there's something called Google Analytics that only people who spend hours every day working on their website would look at. And that's what I look at. And the visa bulletin predictions are by far the most popular page on our entire website. Like over 10,000 people a week are looking at those visa bulletin predictions. So I promise you, as soon as Charlie comes out with the predictions, which, like I said, will be 3 or 4 days after the October visa bulletin comes out, which we also publish, then you can take a look at what Charlie says. I don't put any filter. It's not about what I say. It's about what the State Department says, but it's going to be very good news.
Okay, so we heard it here. I think some really exciting news coming. And for those of you who have not yet passed the NCLEX exam, or if you have not yet passed the IELTS exam, now is the time to do it. Please, now is the time to do it. There are a lot of positive indicators. The 221G situation looks like it's being resolved. It looks like we're getting positive predictions on the visa bulletin. So I think the panel would agree it's really important if you are still wanting to come to America. The American dream is very much alive and well. Please make sure that you pass those exams so that we can help you to get here. I had a question from Antonetta, who asked, if the visa bulletin opens up with more numbers, does that mean it'll be quicker?
Is that one for me, Tanya?
Yeah, well,
either of you. Sorry, either of you. Go ahead, Carl.
Okay. No, I was just I was just checking to make sure the October visa bulletin hadn't come out since that last question. It did not come out. It's not online anyway. It's yes.
Carl was trying to make sure you heard it hot off the press.
You know, the way things are going now, you know, every minute there can be a change. So I just looked it up. It's not out yet. Okay. So yes, it will be quicker. So just to give you a little historical background, back in I think it was around 2015, I think October 2015, for a nurse wanting to come from the Philippines, it was a 7-year wait. I mean, put it in context. I mean, it's terrible, but I remember when my wife applied for her brothers and sisters in the Philippines, and it was a 24-year wait. I mean, can you imagine that? But it was still a 7-year wait for a nurse, which was about as bad as I'd ever seen it. And then from October 2015 until the summer of 2019, that wait kept decreasing and decreasing until it became current last summer. So we were I mean, there's still processing time. So it doesn't mean that because it's current, you can come to the U.S. In 1 day. It doesn't work like that. So your employer has to get a prevailing wage. They have to file an I-140 visa petition. It goes to the National Visa Center. A lot of documents have to be submitted there. And then they set up an appointment at the U.S. Embassy in Manila, and you get the visa. So even if it's current, it could take up to a year to get a green card. But you know, it had gone back up to about 3 years, I think, in March, and everybody was like panicking. But that, you know, you can't just look at the short-term things. You have to look at where the visa bulletin's going in the future. And I think if it's not going to go current, the waiting time will probably be under a year, which really means it's just about current, because you still have to go through all that procedure, and it takes about a year. So yes, I think for the only nurses that are, you know, able to come faster from the Philippines is, you know, there have been a lot of Filipino nurses over the years who've gone up to Canada and they become Canadian citizens, and we can bring them in on a TM in a matter of weeks. But for nurses who are not Canadian citizens, I think it'll take about a year.
Okay. Thank you, Antonetta, for that question. Okay, I'm going to take some questions in the chat and then go back to the questions that were sent through. We have a question from Veronica who's saying, hello, I would like to ask for my friend, is it okay to travel now from the Philippines to the US? My friend is a dual citizen. She has a Filipino passport and a US passport. If so, what are the requirements she needed in presenting to the immigration? Chris?
This is one of the easier questions we're going to get, I think, this morning.
Okay.
If she holds a U.S. passport, she's a U.S. citizen, and so she has every right to be able to enter the United States. She should just show her U.S. passport to any of the immigration officials, and she shouldn't have any problem entering the U.S.
Okay. Well, there we go. Veronica, answer to your question. Simple as that. That's why we do this this panel discussion once a month, because we don't want you to be lying awake, worrying about these different things when, like in this case with Veronica, nothing to worry about. Okay, we have another question from Marion Nell, who's saying, hi, Ms. Tanya and team, can a B1, B2 visa holder with a current EB3 visit the US by October with an immediate relative there in the US? Will I be held at the airport or enter with further screening, especially with this COVID season? Carl?
Okay, so that's something you don't want to do. A B1, B2, those are visitor visas. So you're supposed to have no intent to stay in the United States permanently. And if you're an immediate relative, like a spouse or a child or parent of a U.S. citizen that's sponsoring you for a green card, the immigration service will turn you around and send you back to the Philippines, most likely, because they'll think that you're coming to the United States, not just to visit, that you're coming to the United States to stay permanently. However, there's one proviso about it. So I'm going to go back to my wife and her sister. So she had sponsored her sister. Her sister had waited about 10 years, but there was still 10 to 14 years left to go. And she would come to the US and visit us and stay with us. But since she wasn't an immediate relative, so her ability to get a green card was still 10, 15 years away, and her family was staying in the Philippines, and she got a round trip ticket. In that case, they did let her in because on that particular trip, they trusted that she was not going to come here and stay, that she was going to land here, visit her relatives, and then go back to the Philippines. But I don't think with an immediate relative, they would be very likely to believe that.
Okay, so Marion Nell, that's the expert answer for you. Chris, we have a question about the Healthcare Workforce Resilience Act. Can you give us an update in that regard?
Yeah, so for those of you who are new to this, the Healthcare Workforce Resilience Act was introduced into the U.S. Congress in May, so what's that, about 4 months ago? And in that time, it has become one of the most popular bills in the Congress. We're up to about 40 U.S. senators out of 100, so that's a very big number for something that's only a few months old. And in the U.S. system, we have mainly two political parties: the Democrats, which is President Obama's party, and potential President Joe Biden's party, and on the Republican side is the other party, and that is currently Trump's party, President Trump's party. And we have a U.S. election, of course, here in less than 2 months, actually, and it's been getting obviously an enormous amount of press here in the U.S. and frankly around the world. But the bill is aimed at bringing in 25,000 nurses to help with the COVID crisis. And but even though it's a very popular bill, the U.S. Congress is really at a standstill. The U.S. Politically is very divided right now, and so the Republicans do not want to give in an inch to the Democrats, and frankly, the Democrats don't really want to give an inch to the Republicans. And a lot of that is because of that neither of them want to be shown as weak before the U.S. election. In any event, I think there's a small window in the next few weeks that the U.S. Congress puts together a COVID relief package, and it would have a whole number, it would have hundreds of things in it, including unemployment payment for Americans who are out of work, including explanations and ways to get an eventual immunization plan rolled out, probably some other things like that. And we would hope to take the Healthcare Workforce Resilience Act and make it one part of this much greater bill. Earlier in the summer, the expectation is that that bill was actually going to pass the U.S. Congress in late July or early August, but 6 weeks or so have gone by since that artificial deadline and nothing's happened. And so at this point, I think there's a small chance here in the next 2 weeks or so, maybe 3 weeks at best, that another COVID bill goes through and that we're a part of it. I think with each day that becomes less and less likely, unfortunately. And so the problem isn't our bill. The problem is that there's no massive bill that our bill can be part of. Having said that, there is some sense after the election that because the pressure would be off and politicians would be politically acceptable for American politicians to try and reach some sort of compromise bill. And so there's a period from about the first week of November until the middle of December, what we call here in the US the lame duck period. And it's called that because there's a number of politicians who are either now voted out of office because they would have lost the November election, including potentially even the president, but they still hold the position until January 1st. So that 8 or so week period from early November until the end of December is called the lame duck period. And traditionally, some compromise bills can get passed during that time. And the hope is that one of those compromise bills might be a massive COVID relief package for the American public. And then the hope beyond that is that the HWRA might be part of that package. So I think we have two windows, a small chance here in the next 2 or 3 weeks, Tanya, and then not a great chance, but another chance sometime in the November, early December timeframe.
Okay. Well, thank you for that update and that clarification. I know this bill has been on a lot of people's minds, and there are a lot of people who worked very hard on trying to get it through, but we will be following it closely and monitoring the situation closely and keeping everyone updated. I think, as Carl said, though, the fact that there looks like there's going to be great movement on the visa bulletin, at least hopefully that can give people peace of mind that the process for immigration of EB3 green cards for nurses is going to be moving ahead, whether the Healthcare Workforce Resilience Act comes in or not. So we will keep you posted.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point, Tanya. I think even if the HWRA is ultimately not successful, I think we've got what Carl was saying, that the visa bulletin is certainly going to be favorable. And even if it doesn't even if it doesn't move that forward in October, November, or December, I don't think that means, in fact, I know that doesn't mean that the visas aren't there. What it probably means is that Charlie Oppenheim, who Carl referenced, doesn't want to overexpand the window, not because the numbers aren't there, but because there's just not enough capacity at the embassies and here domestically in the US to actually process the visas. And so what I would expect is if the October or November visa bulletins don't jump forward, they will continue to steadily move forward into next year for all the reasons that Charlie outlined. That's one. Number two, on January 1st, a new Congress is sat, which means that the HWRA and frankly every other bill in front of Congress disappears because we then have a new government starting in January. But the groups that are working to get this HWRA are committed to another HWRA bill. It may be called something different, but it will have a lot of the same characteristics of the HWRA into 2021. So that bill isn't going anywhere. And as Carl said, the visa bulletin looks extremely favorable in the next year or two. So all good news, I think, Tanya.
All good news. We love some good news. So please, if anybody is watching, please tag your friends. It's really important to share this information. There's a lot of misinformation and rumor when there's so much change going on in the immigration space. So please, this is the panel's way of paying it forward for you by sharing this information and these immediate updates. Please share this with your friends and colleagues and pay it forward for them too. Okay, I'm going to try and get in as many of the last questions as we can. We have so many questions here. The good news, though, for everybody watching is the panel have agreed to answer the questions in the chat if we were not able to get to them in the 30 minutes today. But I'll try to get through as many as I can in the next 5 minutes. So Rens has a question about expedited cases. Hi, good day, Ms. Tanya and attorneys. Been seeing a lot of posts about expedited case from the NVC. My question is, do you have an idea how NVC choose which case to expedite? Also, can an agency request from one of their applicant cases to be expedited? Carl.
Yeah, I haven't been asking for expedites, but under the Trump orders right now, a tremendous number of categories of people, most of the family categories, in fact, are not eligible until the end of the year at the earliest to get immigrant visas, visas at embassies abroad. And even some of the employment categories can't get it. But as Chris noted before, generally doctors and nurses are exempted from that travel ban. So if they're expediting anything at all, it should be doctors and nurse cases.
Okay. So we have another question related to this from Antonetta. My friend in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, received an expedited letter since last week of August, but didn't receive packet 4 yet. What steps should she take, Chris?
Well, she should read the letter, because in a lot of these situations, the embassy is having the nurse go directly to the embassy and submit documentation directly to the embassy. So the expedite notices I've seen actually give the instructions on what she should do.
Okay. So Antonetta, please refer to your letter, and if you have questions, I would reach out to your lawyer specifically. We have a question from Marie Gold, who is asking, can you explain if we opted to change our dependents from accompanying to follow to join, as many of us are unable to go home in Manila, and because of the travel ban in different countries, our dependents are also unable to join our embassy interview outside of Manila. How long will it take if it becomes follow to join? Any legal implications? How to process this? Carl.
Well, I haven't had those cases, but yes, I mean, they certainly can follow to join from Manila. But, the embassies have not been processing a lot of people lately. So Chris might have a better idea about how long it would take a family member in Manila to follow to join after the nurse has got her green card in the UAE or Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't have that much information as well, mainly because we haven't seen any nurses really get approved in the last 6 or 9 months. Having said that, traditionally, there is a follow to join process that Manila follows. But I think the simple answer is it's not going to be fast or easy. I think anybody who tells you it's going to be fast or easy is just not being truthful with you. And I think putting too many expectations on timelines just isn't doing you justice, because Manila is trying to prioritize certain kinds of cases. And as Carl said, unfortunately, I don't think a follow to join is going to be a priority. That doesn't mean it's going to be ignored, but given that the embassy has limited bandwidth, they only have a limited number of visa officers working. The embassy is like any other business or any other office. They have a lot of people working from home. They don't have full staff on. And so they are going to prioritize workers coming into the U.S. They're going to prioritize issues for U.S. citizens. And unfortunately, trailing family members are just not going to be as high a priority. Again, doesn't mean that they're not going to be considered. It doesn't mean they're going to be ignored, but they're not going to be a high priority. And so trying to put a time frame on it is unfortunately very difficult. What I'd suggest you do, though, is work through the process and constantly follow up. I think that's the best way to have it happen as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. There's a backlog. So as Chris said, it's very difficult to put a time on it, but I think constant follow-up is the key. Okay, one last question that we're going to take is from Sheila. So Sheila has a question. I am DQ, but I missed something important on the DS260 and the NVC. Cannot reopen it for me. Can I still have the chance to edit it before the interview? I forgot to include my Dubai travel and work 7 years ago. I'm worried this might cause a problem during the interview in the embassy or in the immigration process. That was from Sheila.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you want to do is just make the correction when they're interviewing you. Say, I forgot to do this, and make the correction so you'll be truthful. I don't think you have to do anything prior to the interview.
Okay, so honesty is always the best policy, Sheila. So I think go ahead and let them know when you're at the consulate. Okay, we are out of time. Time flies when you're having fun. Carl, what's your fun fact of the week or the week of the month?
Oh my God.
Something we don't know about you, Carl.
Well, okay. Well, this is, I don't know whether this is a fun fact, but I think it's something that I could share with the nurses. So we at the beginning of this year, after having my own law firm for about 30 years, at the beginning of this year, we joined a large law firm that has hundreds of attorneys all over the country and so on. And it's been hard for me, you know. I mean, when you're the boss for 30 years, it's just hard to, you know, take orders, work for other people, and so on. So this will be my last day at the big law firm. Okay, and come Monday, I will be with my people who processed the nurse cases all these years, and we'll be back to the way we were before. It won't be my law firm. It will be one of my associates, and what they call the older lawyers who are, you know, not regular employees, is of counsel. So I will still be doing the interviews, dealing with the hospitals. The paralegals who've done the nurse cases will be the same people who've done it for me for the last 20 years. But I have gained independence, or I will later today. So thank you all, and I'm very happy today.
Well, we're happy.
Congratulations, Carl.
Congratulations, Carl. We're happy that you're happy, and we wish you continued success.
Thank you.
What about you, Chris? What's a fun fact we don't know about you?
A fun fact. So, you know, the more we do these, the less the facts are fun and maybe more interesting. So, you know, our law firm, like Carl's law firm, has had the pleasure of working with many nurses over these years and staffing up hospitals and other healthcare facilities in the United States. And I was just thinking, I turned 50 years old a little earlier in the year, and in all those years, 50 years, I've actually only spent 2 nights in a hospital. One was the day I was born, and I had and the second day after I was born, and that's it. Other than that, I've never spent a night in a hospital, other than the first 2 days of my life.
Wow, that's really interesting.
Yeah, so I guess I've stayed healthy, thank goodness. But
that's a good thing.
2 nights in a hospital in 50 years, in spite of working in the healthcare industry all this.
Wow. Well, I had another fun fact, but I'm gonna jump on your bandwagon, Chris.
Okay.
I'm 56 years old, and I've only ever been in a hospital twice as well.
See, look at that. We're both healthy and young.
There we go. The day I was born, and I had my appendix out years ago. Wow.
Yeah, right.
So there you have it, everybody. Fun facts about the panel. This was such a fun experience. Thank you to everybody who was watching. Please tag your friends. Please share this information. There is good news coming. If you have not yet passed your NCLEX, please do so right away. If you have not yet passed your IELTS, please join the Connetics Swoosh free. Yes, I said free, totally free IELTS support group. It is for all nurses, not just Connetics nurses. It's our way of paying it forward. We just want to help. So please go ahead and join. And we will be back next month. And Carl and Chris, thank you so much for addressing the questions that will be in the chat. There are some questions in the chat from this show as well as for the teaser. So thank you so much for going in and answering those questions as well. We'll be back next month. Stay safe, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.